Matt Johnson remains in the top post in the House in a stunning floor vote on the opening day of Congress on Friday today, securing the gavel on the first ballot. But the vote did not come without a bit of drama. Stacey Plaskett, woman from Virgin Islands, rose in the House during the speakership vote to protest the House's more than a century-long refusal to give elected officials from U.S. territories a vote on the floor. Let's take a listen.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands seek recognition?
Speaker, I have a parliamentary inquiry. I note that the names of the representatives from the Americas, Samoa, Guam, Northern Mariana, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and the District of Columbia were not called, representing collectively 4 million Americans. Mr. Speaker, collectively the largest per capita of veterans in this country.
Does the gentlelady have a parliamentary inquiry?
I asked why they were not called. Have some respect. It's not going to take.
Gentlelady is recognized.
I asked why they were not called from the parliamentarian, please.
Delegates-elect and the resident commissioner-elect are not qualified to vote. Representatives-elect are the only individuals qualified to vote in the election of a speaker. As provided in Section 36 of the House Rules and Manual, the speaker is elected by a majority of the members-elect voting by surname.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This body and this nation has a territories and a colonies problem. What was supposed to be temporary has now effectively become permanent. We must do something about this problem so that these 4 million. But I have a voice, and
the reading clerk.
Well, Michael, Congresswoman Plaskett asking for a little bit of respect, asking for a little bit of time on the floor there, representing 4 million or talking about 4 million that aren't represented. What are your thoughts about what she said? I think that it's going to open some doors for a lot of conversation.
Well, she's a delegate. And what happens is when you have territories like that, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, et cetera, their quote unquote representatives are called delegates and don't have voting rights. And that's based upon House rules. Looking at the piece from rawstory.com, and according to Delegate Stacey Plaskett, it's been going back more than a century like this. Originally wasn't supposed to be like that, but it is. So I do think that the territories, the delegates should have voting rights. And if they have voting rights, then they would become representatives as opposed to delegates. I do think they should. I don't know if you just need a simple majority to change the House rules. If that was the case when Democrats had control of the House, why didn't they change it? I agree with her, but this was more of, I think, just drawing attention to it. But why didn't Democrats change it when they had control of the House of Representatives?
You know, Matt, that's a very interesting question. I mean, certainly she's speaking a lot of truth there. 4 million people whose voices aren't being heard, especially in such a tight race today when we're talking about how this speaker was elected today. Change could be ahead. I mean, I'm not sure about this particular next 4 years, but it's something I think is opening the door for people to talk about.
And it's another instance in a litany of things that we have in this country that we know to be just gross disingenuousness, dishonesty. I mean, taxation without representation. Weren't they protesting that like in 1770s, right? And now we're in 2025 and 4 million people, the equivalent of the city of Houston, is unrepresented because they've got delegates who, to use my term earlier, is another Pyrrhic victory because you allegedly have representation that can't vote and can only participate in a limited way. It makes absolutely no sense. Whether you want to have full-fledged territorial annexation where they become states is a different question. But the idea that people can be living in what we're still calling territories and have people who are in the House and not even in the Senate, as a matter of fact. So for people that may not know that, they don't have representation in the Senate. But these delegates cannot vote. And it's really absurd because I don't know all the ins and outs. I don't purport to know them. But if they have to pay taxes, if they've got to be adherent to other American laws, then it makes absolutely no sense politically to not allow them to have full-fledged representation. And my understanding is that this also extends to the Cherokee Nation, the Choctaw Nation, some of the indigenous peoples. I mean, the idea that there's not full-fledged representation in 2025 is not only unsustainable, it is abhorrent. In the Commonwealth of the United States. So hopefully they get full representation sooner than later.
Kelly, some would say particularly undemocratic. She's there on the floor, can't even get her vote in, but something got her there. So there's certainly a disparity there and her representation.
For sure. But I know we're talking about Stacey Plaskett at the moment, but DC is included in that number, right? DC is part of that 4 million. And as a virtual native of Washington, D.C. I've been here basically my entire life. To be in a situation where you're technically in the most popular, most powerful city in the nation, arguably the world, and yet the residents who live within this castle, so to speak, don't get a say as to how it's run. Matter of fact, when we have to pass budgets and when we have any type of like major legislation that needs to come down, Congress has to decide how our money is spent. Congress, with the exception of Eleanor Holmes Norton, it's like she has to beg for other people to act on behalf of Washington, D.C. Residents. Right. And it is absolutely absurd. It is absolutely absurd. Like we're actually in the continental United States of America. Like we're on the mainland. We're not talking about the islands. We're not talking about the colonies, right? We're the district. We're the nation's capital. And we are still subject to basically being treated like a colony. Like Matt said, it is abhorrent. It is absurd. And she brought this up in a remarkable way. But to Imhotep's point, where was this energy when we had the majority? And that is really my gripe with Democrats at the moment, really, you know, in longevity, because every time we have the power, we don't exercise it for purposes of being politically correct. And we do not have the time, nor can we afford to do that anymore.
Candace, can I add two very quick things, please?
You can, sure, Matt.
Two things. The first thing is, if you notice, this is, and I think Michael hit the nail on the head, this is a House rule. This is not even a constitutional rule. And that's a huge issue. That means that Congress has in place rules that it can change to allow the voting, number one. But number two, on top of that, you know, it doesn't make any sense that you're not allowing people to be fully involved. And I think if they are paying taxes and if there have been votes for statehood, it's really just anti-democratic. So the idea that this is a House rule that's not even constitutionally enshrined makes it that much more problematic because it's just not being changed because it's not being changed. And I think it needs to be changed.
Yeah. Listen, as you said, Kelly, remarkable what she did. Timing, just a little bit off, but that doesn't mean that down the line, these doors can't be open for discussion. There's certainly a lot more going on that people would see as a priority, which is why they didn't even want her to speak. But she held her ground. She refused to sit, and she got her point out.
Yeah, tastes like Curl Prep Natural Hair Solutions at curlprep.com.
I'm in shock.
For curls, locks, braids, twists, and even those wigs and extensions. Women, men, and children are loving this line. Look at this video and you be the judge. People line up to see this product in action at hair shows, and when they take a seat and try it, they don't believe it's their hair. Buy the products at curlprep.com. It works on all hair types. Use code ROLAND, that's ROLAND, lowercase letters, to get a 15% discount. Parents, remove the ouch. You will love this system because you can comb the product through your child's hair with your fingers. It's all at curlprep.com. Use code ROLAND, lowercase letters, to get a 15% discount.
On the tongue, so you know that it's sweet.